This is where you have to realize he's actually considering this. He's actually, which many of you that claim to believe have never actually taken into consideration full scale of what this endeavor is, what you're claiming to say you believe, and what you're taking upon yourself to follow Christ. And he really is, without knowing if he can make the jump, to 100% solidified Jesus Christ is Lord and all that entails. But he's actually considering the magnitude of what that would mean in real life. Welcome to Acts 2and42. All right, welcome back to Acts 2and42. This is Keith. So today I have a Jordan Peterson clip, and I love Dr. Jordan Peterson, and a lot of respect, a lot of admiration, but most of what he does is more pulling meaning from the faith, not necessarily agreeing with the faith, when he steps in the realm of Christianity and everything. But there seems to be some sort of, I don't know if it's conversion or he's contemplating it differently now, but there's, a lot that is he Christian now? Does he believe in God now? What is he going through? But so I want to play this clip. I haven't watched the whole thing. I just wanted to respond organically to it. I do have a disclaimer, but I'm going to give that at the end. So no sense in giving it if you don't want to watch this video. So let's just jump right into his video.
People often ask me, "Do you believe in God?" Which I don't like that question. I don't like that question. I don't like that question. Yeah, I don't like the question.
Doesn't like the question.
People have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists.
No, but I believe he probably exists. Now, I guess the whole point of this video is he a false prophet? All right. I'm already saying no, but I'll play along and see what they're getting at. But
the traditions bind the community together. Now, I'm saying that, and I don't go to church, and the reason I don't go to church is because, well, it drives me crazy, to speak frankly. I haven't been able to sit in a situation like that ever since I was, ever, really. That's really the truth of it, ever. I'm not convinced that that's a good thing, because I do believe communal return to the source of the community's ethics is actually a necessary thing. And then, because there's also something about going where a bunch of other people are to reaffirm your commitment to the good that you're all aiming at, that's got some power in it. And I don't think that that's something that we should forego. I think it's dangerous. I mean, look.
So he's good at seeing the utility in something, even if he doesn't believe in or agree with it, which is beneficial. Like, a lot of people don't realize the morals that we claim to have today, being decent human beings and decent people, that's only because there was a church. That's only because there was a religion and a faith, which reminded people weekly, like he's pointing out, that it matters how we treat one another, that we ought to be ethical, that we ought to have good morals, that there's certain things you don't do. And I've asked, I have a lot of conversations with my grandparents to understand their generation. There's a huge difference between them and, say, my parents, and there's a huge difference between my parents and us, and so forth. But wanting to understand, like the adults of the 50s, the adults of the 50s and 60s, starting families, and what those morals were when they were dating and marrying and so forth. So I've had a lot of conversations with them, but one key thing was they had a small community, and it was church-based, it was faith-based, which, whether or not you believe in God or believe that Jesus is God and the story of Jesus is true, was still beneficial to know that the person you're dating and courting and wanting to marry, has similar morals and ethics that you have, that you're aligned. Nowadays, man, roll the dice. You have no idea what they actually believe and practice. So I agree that there can be utility in something, but that's applicable. It has nothing to do with the Christian church. It has nothing to do with the Christian faith. Because you could say that about any other religion that could be false, could be completely made up. But there's virtue in it because it doesn't inspire or encourage people, or the practice makes people slightly better people, makes them accountable for their actions. But that's not necessarily, that's not just the Christian church. That's any religious practice or organization of any kind.
Dangerous. I mean, look, even if you're cynical about church, and I guess I would put myself in that category, it's certainly the case that communal church going in the 1950s, say, provided the average person with at least an hour a week where they were contemplating, no matter how poorly, the purpose of ethics in life and the idea of a higher purpose and a higher meaning in life. And you got to think that spending an hour a week thinking about that is better than never doing it at all. I don't know how that tradition can be revivified in a meaningful way, but I really do think it's a catastrophe that we've lost it, because we don't have a center, an ethical center that holds our community together. And the consequence of that is that we're fragmenting quite badly. But what you see there is if you view someone with love, then it's incumbent upon you to treat them as if they're valuable. And then the more you treat other people as if they're valuable, the better person you are, the higher the moral demand that's placed on you. And then I would say too, well then, that's another reason why it's so important to be truthful and in some sense to be good, because it isn't obvious to me that you can withstand that moral load if you're compromised by too much sin. It's too much. And that's another thing that we're not very good at teaching young people about. You shouldn't do that. It's like there's a sanctimonious authority that goes along with that that's the wrong tone. It's more like, I don't know how you lay it out properly, but you tell people that you love how to avoid the road to hell. And you don't do that because you're shaking your finger at them or because you're a moral authority. You do it because you don't want them to burn. And I think there's too much of the moral authority still in the church and not enough of the love that helps people avoid the fire.
Unfortunately, it's a bit subjective. Not from him, but just people in general. People in general, love has many different meanings. And what they believe is love is many different things. So that's why I say it's very subjective. What is love and what is, actually genuine concern for someone's soul or well-being or just prosperous life. I'm warning you not to do that because it's going to be harmful in this world. So that's the problem.
I've taken the idea of God seriously for a very long time. And I've said on multiple occasions that I try to act as though God exists, and that's essentially my definition of belief. When people say, do you believe in God? Belief is a multidimensional word. And one question is, well, what do you mean by believe? And for me, the proof of belief is to be found in action. And I decided that I would act.
That's what James says. I'll show you my faith by my works.
Of course, I'm imperfect in that, inevitably. Now,
that's what I think Peter said. We're supposed to be walking epistles. And James said, "I'll show you my faith by my works." It's not about what you say you believe; it's about how you walk, how you live. What are your actions? Do your actions show that you actually believe there's a God? And if you don't, then it doesn't matter what your mouth says.
He's doing that more explicitly as well.
And Jesus said, that the things that come out of our mouth show what's on the inside of us. It's not cleaning the outside. It's not, your whitewashed tombs with dead men's bones inside of them. You look beautiful on the outside, beautiful washed marble, but inside is corruption. So every time we speak, that's a form of action. We demonstrate what's in us.
If you want to be a Christian, let's say if you think that's necessary, it's not exactly obvious what you should do. You should go to church, but that's not
necessarily
enough, I don't think. I find it useful to contemplate the highest good on a continual basis. I'm trying to keep myself oriented in that direction. It's a religious orientation, fundamentally. It's an overwhelming orientation. But there's no escaping the questions of the ultimate meaning of life. I'm not an atheist anymore, because I don't look at the world that way anymore. I'm not a materialist anymore. I don't think the world's made out of matter. I think it's made out of what matters. It's made out of meaning. What we orient towards unconsciously,
So, like I say, he's already in a realm where he's considering and reflecting on things that are far out of the realm of normal society. Normal society doesn't debate materialism. We don't have these discussions and these conversations, and to do that, you do dabble in some difficult conversations if you're really genuine in reflecting on these things and considering what we actually know. So I don't say that. I mean, I just say it to just give a little bit of room. That's all. Just a little bit of room and consideration. For a lot of us have never had to consider these things. We just either accept it and believe it. Most people just go by their gut. I just believe it's true. Like I just believe our dead loved ones are all around us, or whatever the case may be. We haven't really challenged our thoughts. We haven't really asked ourselves, how do I know this? How do I know? Whatever, that the dead spirits are still roaming the earth, or whatever the case may be, or that there's a God, or any of it. And he actually is. And he's saying, after doing that, I can't say that it's just a material world, that there's nothing else. And, materialism is there's nothing outside of what is, matter. There's nothing spiritual. There's nothing unseen. And of course, as Christians, we believe in the seen world and the unseen world, as well as other religions as well. But materialism doesn't make any room for that. It's just whatever is matter that's here, nothing else. And he's saying, look, I don't believe there's no God, and I don't believe it's only the material world. So I think he's looking, he's searching. I don't know.
Who would have the audacity?
Yeah, this was the video I shared earlier.
That they believed in God.
Yeah.
If they examined the way they lived, who would dare say that? To believe, you think, to believe in a Christian sense, to actually, this is why Nietzsche said there was only ever one Christian, and that was Christ. To have the audacity to claim that.
That's not true.
Means that you live it out fully.
That sounds good, but it's not, yeah.
And that's an unbearable task, in some sense. To be able to accept the structure of existence, the suffering that goes along with it, and the disappointment and the betrayal, and to nonetheless act properly, right? To aim at the good with all your heart, right? To dispense with the malevolence and your desire for destruction and revenge and all of that, and to face things courageously and to tell the truth, to speak the truth and to act it out. That's what it means to believe. That's what it means.
It's true.
It doesn't mean to state it.
I'll come back to this.
And unless you act it out, you should be very careful about claiming it. And so I've never been comfortable saying anything other than I try to act as if God exists, because God only knows what you'd be if you truly believed. I mean, if you think about it in some sense, that's the central idea in Christianity, is that if you were capable of believing, it would be a transfiguring event.
Yeah.
A truly transfiguring event.
Yep.
And I know people experience that to one degree or another. But we have no idea what the limit of that is. And we have no idea what the possibility is within each person if they lived a life that was maximally courageous and maximally truthful. Because maybe you're running at 60% or 70% or 20% and at cross purposes to yourself. God only knows what you'd be if you believed. And so, while I try to act like I believe, but I'd never claim that I manage it. So you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and the critic, my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that. And
I think I have a video on this channel called Zeitgeist Debunked? I can't remember. Zeitgeist means spirit of the age, and it was almost like a documentary type video that came out a decade or two ago. Basically laying out all the mythological gods and the Egyptian gods and everything, and just showed how the story of Jesus is borrowed from all these other stories. He's just one more mythical god in a line of many of them. And at first, it can shake you. It made me question a lot of things. But there is a video. I think it's something. It's either Zeitgeist Debunked or something like that. But very interesting. So there's two sides to everything, and only the foolish. Whether it's cults or religions or weird sects of religions, but it's the kind of foolish people, but average people tend to fall for deception at overly simplistic ideas, like just showing a correlation between this story and Jesus doesn't necessarily mean Jesus is false. And I'm not saying me just saying that is, I'm not doing that work right now. But check out that video. But a lot of people never hear two sides. They never hear, oh, what could be the explanation of this or anything. Anyway, I want to go through a plethora of religious views that rely on people's simplistic consideration, very, very simple, one-dimensional understanding of something, and just like, oh wow, that's crazy. This must be true. They haven't really dissected it. They haven't critiqued the information. So, yeah, let's see what he says.
Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things.
This is some areas that he loses me where it's like, man, you really could have gotten, you could have dug deep to objective reality and objective truth. And then you went back to the metaphorical. He's very, very gifted. He's phenomenal in like maps of meaning and his teaching of being able to glean understanding and purpose and meaning from different things, so he would be great if he was a Christian, he would be great in the church at finding spiritual meanings and messages and patterns through prophecy and scripture, because that's the type of person he is. But it's like, he's so close to carving out some objective reality, but then he leans back on his gift, which is finding meaning, finding metaphors, which that's our faith. It's typifications and patterns. It's perfect for someone like him. But when it comes to hashing out the objective, it's like, no, stay right there. Just stay right there. And I think he's saying, I don't think he's claiming it's a myth. I think he's saying, let's say it's a myth, so there's a myth of Jesus, but there is a historical Jesus. Where these other gods, there's just a myth. There's no real history, historical accounts outside of their religion. So anyway.
Problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. That's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. We have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to... that seems to me oddly plausible. But I still don't know what to make of it. It's partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe.
This is where you have to realize he's actually considering this. He's actually, which many of you that claim to believe have never actually taken into consideration full scale of what this endeavor is, what you're claiming to say you believe, and what you're taking upon yourself to follow Christ. And he really is, without knowing if he can make the jump, to 100% solidified. Jesus Christ is Lord. There is a God, and Jesus Christ is his son, came to redeem mankind, and all that entails. But he's actually considering the magnitude of what that would mean in real life. And many people go around claiming that they believe in God, claiming they believe in Jesus Christ, and thinking that he's their savior. And my God, man, the things we say and do, the things we allow ourselves to recite, to repeat, to believe, to act. It's like, you can't say you believe in God. You cannot say you believe, not in this one. Or you have no idea who he is. You have no idea. And I'm not saying we should be terrified of him like he's a demon that's ready to kill people. But there's a healthy balance. Consider instead of the disciplinary father. And then, Jordan Peterson could definitely do well in this area, finding meaning and purpose and imagery, through the father and the quintessential or the whatever, typical father, the disciplinary figure, and the one that you do have fear and reverence towards, as your father, as the head of the family, and as the disciplinarian who will kick your butt or who will tell you, you're in some deep trouble if you do wrong. But many of you have no idea what this is, and God knows how, what type of relationship you have with your father, or whatever the case may be. But I know, I don't know. I was raised not to play with my father. He was a disciplinarian. He was someone that it did matter if I misbehaved, if I acted in a more immoral behavior. And so my relationship with God, I don't play with God. But it does matter. And so many people treat me and some of my brothers as though, I've been called a purist, and almost like an extremist or whatever, because I actually believe in following the faith. And it's just like, my God, where's the faith then? If I'm a purist, and just because I believe we ought to go by the letter of the words of Christ. He said it, so you do it. He didn't say it, so you don't force people to do it. That's pretty simple to me. But I don't believe the Father, I don't believe our Lord is someone to play with. And I don't believe it's up to my opinion to pick and choose parts of the faith that I feel like believing in. But this is a man that I feel like the Christian ought to at least appreciate. You can say, well, he's not saved. He's going to go to hell or whatever. I don't know. But that's cool. That's not the conversation. What you ought to be able to recognize is when you're standing in front of Cornelius and you see devotion, you see zeal for God and love for God, even if you have no idea who he is and and you're trying to consider that. But and maybe Cornelius isn't a perfect example because he was devoted to God. He had some sort of faith that there was a God, but I guarantee you his practice of that faith, I guarantee you his understanding of God and everything wasn't in line with Christ's teaching yet because he didn't have it yet. So I don't know, just allow people some room and see when someone's being genuine and someone is really, really close and saying, you're close, let me help you get there. Because we should want to help people get there, not exclude them.
Prophets. Fundamentally, I am a psychologist. I'm a behavioral psychologist, and I'm a professor, and I'm doing that, on a much larger stage, let's say. But that's really what I'm doing. And so it's a combination of those two things. And I speak about religious matters, but I don't see myself as a religious leader. I don't want to make that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of this I'm actually going to share. I watched the 18-minute clip, and I'm not going to share all of it. I'm going to link it in the description so you can check it out for yourself if you want. I think the intent of the producer of that video was trying to show the consideration of like through a series of quotes from Jordan Peterson clips, his consideration and contemplation and his genuine, search to know and understand, but fear of what that may mean and to do so and struggling, with that. But also that his overarching, message shows, like he say, I act as though I believe, I speak as though I believe. He's as he's imploring his, fellow man, the listener, he's utilizing the words of Christ. He's taking the message of Christ and begging them to consider these things and do these things, which I think is worth something. I think we ought to give that more credit where it's due and appreciation. Because God knows, like everyone's not going to believe. But if everyone was capable of saying, this is of merit, this is useful, and let's share this, we would all have a better life. We would all have a better world because it created the good that is in America, the good that is in the world. I would argue predominantly came because of the Christian faith, Christian and Judaic faith. So anyone that recognizes that merit, utilizes it, and helps spread that is doing good to some extent. Now, as far as him being a false prophet, I think, it was laughable to even consider because, like he said, I'm not claiming to be a religious leader of any kind. He's not even claiming a religion. So, whether it's semantics or not, or technicality. I don't think someone can be a false prophet without claiming to be a prophet, without claiming or acting and speaking as though he is a prophet. And I don't think he's done that in any regards, in any manner. So, but that aside, the only thing I thought he was getting it wrong when he was talking about fear of like saying, do you believe in God? Well, do I act like I believe in God? And man, Nietzsche saying that only one man was a Christian, that was Christ. Well, that sounds good, but it's false. And he made it seem like it was impossible. It's impossible to be Christ, and that's not what being a Christian is. A Christian is following Christ, believing in the Lord Jesus Christ, and following him as a born-again believer, as someone who, like he said later on, belief is something that ought to, and in many cases has transformed someone. Well, there's a gospel promise that when you believe, right, that you are to be born again. Not just from the moment of belief, I'm not a proponent of sinner's prayer and just saying, reading the script, saying its words, and poof, you're a believer now. You're now converted. But no, there is a transformation that comes through the faith. There's a gospel promise that it is to change man and therefore redeem him from original sin, from our fallen state, from our carnal ways. That being born again, the spirit that God gives us is, for one, an earnest, is a down payment of a promise that he is coming back to redeem you, like someone putting something down in the pawn shop and then coming back and getting out of hock. There is something put down that is proof that he's coming back to redeem, to bring you back to him, to be with him. And there is a promise that day, that's when we will be like him. That's John, the third chapter, 1 John, the third chapter. That's when we will be like him, right? When he returns. We will be given, a celestial, a heavenly body, a resurrected body that doesn't have the infirmities of the human condition, right? The nature of Adam. So it's like he's missing it. He's saying that there ought to be transformation, but I feel like he's missing it in the first part of that when he's like utterly terrified and distraught at what it must mean to try to be like Christ, and you can't be. You can be a heck of a lot like him if you're actually born again. If you have his spirit, that spirit is that guiding light, is that compass, that even though you may have a nature or a mind and upon instinct want revenge, want to lash out, want to fight, that thing is supposed to hone you back in. And it does. I speak from experience, and any believer watching this can say the miraculous things you may have witnessed in your life just from self-control, love, forgiveness, tolerance, for someone else, but that doesn't mean you did it all the time and was perfect. We're just supposed to yield to that guidance, yield to that spirit that transforms us, creates a change in our life. And we're supposed to metaphorically or spiritually, not metaphorically, but bury, mortify those evil deeds, the human way, which is sedition and arguments and fights and division and hate, among others. So, but overall, I mean, what do you want from the man? I think look at the intellectual community, the academic community. It's like, what do you expect from them? And I feel like if God looks at change and transformation and conversion and belief in any realistic regard, then you can't judge it with the same measuring stick. And what I mean by that is, if you're coming from academia, like, he's practically converted already. You know what I mean? Because he's coming at such a disadvantaged position. Whereas, like Cornelius, I mentioned earlier, Cornelius was coming from a world that most people believed in some sort of God at that time. They believed in the spiritual world. They believed in these things, even if it was many gods and different things. But they weren't predominantly atheists. It wasn't the common practice. And so, you know what I mean? Like, he's already coming from a theist perspective, and so he's close. But you're coming from halfway there, and the things he's saying is making sense. He's close, but close is not theist. Close is not Christian. Close is not saved. Close is not born again. And the last thing was the disclaimer. I have a high level of respect and admiration for Dr. Jordan Peterson. I have a high level of care when dealing with anyone who is my superior many, many times over in these fields, that I don't have the hubris and therefore audacity to criticize their words in manners that only a fool would. So I speak carefully. I speak in respect to consideration of his knowledge, of the breadth of the things that he's studied and understands and is considering. And I do so with love and respect, because from following through the years, man, I look at him as my brother, and I'm really rooting for him, but I appreciate the things he's doing and the things he's saying. And so I think that was good. I wanted to share. I wasn't sure what was going to get into. It actually got into a video we've kind of already dealt with before, but I think it's beneficial for Christians and theist, atheist alike. This is valid content, in this realm, in this conversation. And I really appreciate him for his views, for his knowledge, for the things he says. So let me know what you guys think. I mean, what do you guys think just in general about any one of those, things that he touched on? Yeah, definitely huge recommendation to check out more of what he talks about. In a secular sense, he brings immense value to the average person. A lot of respect to him, a lot of appreciation. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. And, thank you for watching. Ask2and42.com for more. Thanks.